were obstinate, hard-headed, stiff-necked, and cold-hearted. Certainly, he wasn't a bad guy. In fact, the scriptures say that Moses was the meekest of all prophets. Did a fairly good job at leadership. He was able to convince a slave people to rise up and leave where the master's hand was still strong, and even convince them to walk into that sea without knowing how it would work out. He wasn't a bad leader, yet his ending isn't what we would expect. After 120 good years, 40 of which spent in leading these hard people, the time comes for his retirement, and we would expect that they would find a nice place out there in the wilderness, somewhere where they could just get under some shade trees, and they would take him to the front of the room, and some people would stand up and give some warm remembrances of the time when they were there and had asked for some meat to eat, and they got themselves some quail, and they probably would tell a few jokes about how they gorged themselves and how Moses hung in there for those 40. Certainly there had to be some warm scenes to remember. Maybe they could give Moses a gold watch or some kind of a book with photographs or drawings in there about things that had happened during the course of his ministry. But when he gets to the end of 120 good years and they're on the brinks of the promised land, about to step into their place of inheritance, Moses is taken up to the lofty heights of Pisgah, up there on Mount Nebo by himself. And all that is recorded is God allowed him to look at what he would not experience, and then he simply died all by himself. Closing scenes are of him looking at what he couldn't have after 40 hard years. Could something nice be said about him or to him? Could at least an armor bearer walk up the side of that mountain with him and help him to make? After all, he's 120 years old. Mountain climbing is hard for an old man. But what Moses does, according to the scriptures, is he stands in front of the people of God, the children of all of those hard-necked folks who were so obstinate and tough that God would not let them go into the land of promise. As he looked at the crowd he was going to speak to, he looked at one and said, "You look just like your daddy, that sorry rascal who rose up against me and tried to lead the people to go back into Egypt." But he had to stand there, and instead of rehearsing what must have been going on in his mind, because God had already told him, "You're going to die now. You're getting ready to die now," he stands up in front of the people who had pushed him so hard he committed that sin at Kadesh when he hit the rock with his staff and said, "Must we make water come out of this rock?" And God said, "Because of that, you won't go in." He now stands up, and in his last scene with these people, he is forced by God to speak blessings. Bless you as you are on your way into the land of promise. I can't go, but I'm so happy for you. Then he's got to take the keys out of his pocket. The keys of leadership, and to someone who had been under his leadership for some 40 years, to Joshua, he has to hand the keys to the executive office over and say to the people, "Follow him. Don't worry about me anymore. Follow him. This is your leader." And when he finishes getting that out, he turns around and begins to make his way up to the lofty heights of Pisgah, Mount Nebo, all by himself, and they could not even go with him. That just doesn't seem fair to me. Forgive me for thinking in human terms, but God, is this how you treat your servants? After stepping forward, after he told you, God, I can't talk. I can't go in before Pharaoh and argue the case. And God, you said to him that his prophet would be his brother Aaron. Aaron didn't even do right. Wasn't it Aaron and Miriam who one day rose up and said, who are you? You're just our brother. You're not more close to God than we are. No, no, no. Who are you? You don't tell us what to do. We're prophets just like. Remember when God struck his sister with leprosy? Remember when his sorry brother, when Moses had gone up to talk with God, let the people con him into building an idol and worshiping it? That's his help. From any human assessment, we would have to say, bro, you did a pretty good job. For 40 years walking around in circles, think about it now. This meek prophet was told by God on one occasion, forget the people. I will destroy them, and I will make of you and your family a brand new nation. It would have been the Mosesites who were the children of God. But Moses had enough compassion in his heart to say, no, Lord, kill me, but spare the people. Now, at the end of a ministry like that, he can't get a plaque, can't get a memorial cake, can't have anybody get up and make some comments about how their lives were touched and changed. No, God dictates the closing scenes of his life and makes him go before those people and bless them, climb the mountain by himself, and not just lie down and die, but he's got to look first at what he can't experience. I know God's not like that, so there's got to be something else going on, God. What is it you're up to? What are you doing? Why are you doing your boy like this? This is Moses. This is the one you talked to. This is the one you allowed to see you when you hid him in the cleft of the rock. This is your friend. How do you treat your enemies? Well, I think there are a few points that need to be made. Point number one, as good as Moses was, he wasn't perfect. We tend to evaluate the public lives of people and make declarations about who's good and bad. Maybe those declarations ought to be made about who is bold and honest and who is secretive and sneaky, because the truth of the matter is all have sinned. You pick the patriarch, pick the prophet, pick that person who you think was so awesome. Follow them into the secret places. In fact, open up the shade of their mind and read what's really going on in the head. And I will declare today that we're all pretty much the same in one regard. Sinners in need of forgiveness and the gift of salvation given by Jesus Christ. A righteousness that is flawed, good deeds that come from less than good motives, and none of us can stand up and look down at others. That's number one. Your good deeds do not give you a waiver from paying for your bad ones. And with all the good that Moses did, the time came when he would have to pay for the wrong that he did. That's number one. Number two, look at the way God scripted his life. And remember this in your thinking. When you pray to be led by God, I can guarantee you the map he gives you would not be the map you would draw up for yourself. What I'm saying is that when God is in control, he'll take you places and directions you would not choose to go. But God knows what route will get you to glory. I'm telling you, the same route won't work for all of us. There's some in this room who would go straight to hell if you didn't have some trouble. If there was not the ability and blessing to, on occasion, experience lack, some of us would forget God. If everybody was around us cheering for us about those things or areas in which we excel, and there was nobody who'd give us a critical word of truth, we might not make it to glory. We like to hear certain things and experience certain things, and we want to walk on the rose petal covered path to glory, but at the end of the day, God knows the path. One Bible writer says he knoweth the path, the road that I take. And as a matter